welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And I'm sorry to report that Jody Lynn has a family emergency going on today, so she will not be able to join us, but she will be back next week. But I think it's going to be a fun show anyway. It would have been great if Jody Lynn was here because, as listeners know, she and her husband own a small farm in Alberta, Canada, and we're going to be talking about growing topics here. So that she would have loved to have been a part of this conversation, but that's okay. I think it's going to work out really well anyway, because my guest, and I'm going to try to get the pronunciation right, Matthieu Mehuys. No, I did it again. I screwed it up. I'm sorry. It's Mehuys. Is that it?
Yes, exactly. Matthieu Mehuys.
Matthieu Mehuys. Okay. So forget the first part. I said it right the second time. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. You did a great job at saying my name correctly. Yeah,
I actually got it. Okay, good. Yeah, well, a little practice helps. But Matthieu is a landscape architect. And of course, as listeners know, I run that gardening service. And so we're going to have a lot to talk about where gardening and, just anything growing related is concerned. But it turns out we have a number of different interests in common. So I'm not quite sure where the conversation is going to go today. What I do know is where I'm going to start. First of all, Matthieu, welcome to the program. I'm glad you could join me today. But what I want you to start off with is to just kind of tell your story about how you ended up in this space in the first place. Because now I may be wrong about this, but as I understand it, there was like a pivotal event that kind of led to this.
Yeah, totally. There's a few pivotal events, I think. So my backstory actually started around the age of 3 years old. I grew up on a family farm. My brother and father still today are farmers. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was 3 years old, I got so fascinated about how is it possible that you can have a tiny little seed, put it in the soil, it can become a huge plant.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Or a massive tree. I was just like mind blown from it. And because I'm surrounded by plants as I'm growing up on a farm. And then by the time I was 5 or 6, I told my parents, like I had made a decision, I'm going to start my own vegetable garden. Because at that time, our farm didn't have much gardens. It was mostly cash crops, like big crops and cattle. Okay. So it was getting into a more industrialized farm at that time. So my parents, both very busy with both their own business. They said like, no, we don't have time for that. There's like our garden is like it is. We're not going to change anything. But I somewhat persisted and I kept asking for it. You know how these kids can do that.
Oh, sure.
Eventually they said, here, there's a little part in the back of the yard.
Just go do something over there. Leave us alone.
Yeah, leave me alone. Like, I love my parents. There's nothing wrong with them. But they were so busy that they couldn't even think about something like that.
Sure.
But I started out and I started with radishes. So if you're a gardener or you want to start out gardening, growing your own food, radishes is like the easiest crop ever. So for some odd reason, I did that. And I had my earliest success in life. I had grown my first own radishes and I was so proud of it. I showed it to my mother. We had like a salad in the evening and I was like, wow, life is great, growing my own food, eating my own food. It's like, wow. And that's, I think, still up until today, it's one of the richest experiences you can have. Just like connecting with food, connecting with farmers, growing your own food, gardening, all those stuff. That's like, there's not much that can beat that in my opinion. So,
and just to clarify, I want to make sure I got the story right. You actually grew your first radishes at age 3?
Not at 3. I was fascinated about it, but thanks for clarifying. But by the time I was 5 to 6,
wow,
I told my parents I want to have my own garden.
Yeah, that's still impressive. That's really great. What a wonderful experience to have with that, because that's formative. Those are the formative years, right? 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh yeah, totally.
In your formative years, that's what you're forming in your subconscious mind. Like, what a great storyline to put into your subconscious mind.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's also predestined in a way, but we can talk more about that later. But then I went on. I thought like, okay, I've cracked the code of how to grow food. Super easy. Put some seeds in the soil, harvest it. But as it turns out, radishes are the easiest, and all the other stuff is really hard to grow.
Oops, hadn't thought of that part.
Yeah. So, but I went out and asked my dad to get some seeds, these small bags with all the seeds. I got like a bunch. I prepared my soil. I even put some compost in. and I spread the seeds everywhere in my garden. I also started to design it like in a cross shape, so I had 4 little patches. That's where my passion for design started, I think.
Okay.
And then I spread the seeds, and then I thought like I'll just come back a few weeks later with nice tomatoes, lettuces, all of these things are going to be there. But you know what happened next? I came back and my garden was overgrown by weeds.
Oh,
Higher than myself. I'm a 6-year-old, Weeds
yeah.
we probably put way too much compost in because our soil is very, like, it's a super hard clay soil.
Oh,
Where
okay.
because it actually was still under the ocean level
Hmm.
up until 800 years ago,
Okay.
before the monks started pushing back the ocean by building the dikes and all these things
Hmm.
in Belgium. So, but then I was devastated and I couldn't understand, like, why is nature not supporting me in what I want? And then why I'm telling you this story is that fast forward, I continued my life. I started a bachelor in garden design because I always had that passion. I also did some other studies, but I graduated in garden design, and I was feeling like, no, there's more in life. I don't just want to become a garden designer. I love it. I'm still doing it today, but there must be more. So I went on. I studied a master in landscape architecture for bigger projects because I also had a passion for farming as well, as I grew up in that environment. So I wanted to study more. Got my master degree. That was in Germany, in Munich. And then I got into the 9-to-5 thing, where I thought, like, this is it. I'm going to get a job. And I worked for 2 companies in Germany, like some of the best landscape architecture firms, in my opinion, in the world, even in Germany. But I got in this 9-to-5 rat race, and I was completely depressed because I chose this job to be outside and to help people and to do projects. And in Germany, it ended up being very bureaucratic, which I'm grateful for the experience because I got to learn how to do it the German way. Like, they're engineers, super high quality working, very high work ethics. So that was a great experience. But I quit my job. I packed my backpack, had some money saved up. I started traveling the world to visit projects that have to do with eco-tourism, eco-resorts, things that are having a good impact on the world, because I wanted to know, like, is there a way that we can do good for the world and have some interesting businesses around it? So I volunteered on farms. I went to hotels that were doing something different, that is, like, they're improving the environment. And then from that whole experience, I got into a pivotal moment because I was, like, living the good life. I was surfing around the world. I had a job as a freelancer. I was just working 1 day a week. And then at some point, Mother Nature decided to have a plot twist. And I went to the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador, one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. It's just what you have to go and see it. It's like huge trees. It's animals everywhere. But to be honest, it's actually quite a hostile environment. There's a lot of crocodiles, animals that can pretty much kill you. And in a way, I got a wake-up call from Mother Nature, and that's how I look at it, looking back to it, because I got a disease called dengue, which is like kind of like malaria.
Oh, yeah.
So I was tied to my bed for like 2 months. I lost a lot of weight, and then my whole life went actually south. It went really down. Like, I had blown up all my money from traveling. I was quite sick for 2 months. I had to recover from that. Then even more happened. My girlfriend dumped me.
Oh,
I lost all my money. It was like rock bottom, And then from that experience, I took it as, and again, it's easy to say in retrospect, but I took it on as a challenge. Okay, now I can rebuild my life from scratch and really do what I'm here to do, which is to help people to create beautiful environments and to help regenerate our planet. Because if we look at it, our planet is in a bit of a dire situation. And if we don't actively help Mother Nature to restore itself, it'll just get rid of us, because we're a bit of the species that is destroying it. So if we don't help Mother Nature, then it'll just get rid of us over time. That's what I think. And we're heading in that direction, and not to be like apocalyptic,
Yeah,
That's the
that's the
right.
one.
I was mixing it up. But like if we don't change, then yeah, it's going to become a very difficult environment to live in. And that's the bad side. So enough talking about the bad side. The good news is that we can actually do it really fast because nature is so robust and so agile that if we help it a hand, the regeneration can happen super fast. So it's just about shifting. We don't have to like redo everything or like we have this whole paradigm in climate change that we have to like stop everything and we have to make everything illegal in every, and I don't think it's the right solution because that will just impoverish people and then the problems will just get worse. We need to empower people to do it in a different way whilst keeping all our modern day things that we have. And it might sound contradictory, but it's not. We can.
It doesn't actually. A few years ago, I had a co-host. I've had many co-hosts over the years, and I had one a few years ago named Louis de Souza, who's very much into soil reclamation and alternative ways of growing things in the same space that are reinforcing each other and don't use each other's resources and so forth. And he's really into the soil reclamation thing. So we did a lot of talk about that, but we haven't talked about it in a few years. So I'm glad you're visiting because this is kind of a way of kind of revisiting all that and kind of catching up on what the latest news is, so to speak.
Oh my God,
what are the latest developments? So that's one of the other things I'm hoping you'll be able to share with us. What are the latest things that we've been discovering?
It's pretty wild. If you want me to answer it now,
go ahead.
I'll just finish my story. So from that experience, rock bottom, I started my own business, started helping people across the world, and now I have a successful business called Palonia Landscape Architects, and I'm also teaching people online in an online masterclass how they can design, create, and maintain their own garden, and so that's how where I'm at today. And then I'm constantly like I've done a bunch of courses, like I did permaculture trainings. I'm constantly in that whole space on the forefront of what's happening in how we can speed up the regeneration of our planet. Because it's not only good for our planet, it's really good for our own lives and also for business. Many people like think that if we want to do good for our environment, it will be bad for the economy. And it's like, it's actually the complete opposite.
That's
if
really
we do it the right way. And so the latest developments in soil health that we're seeing is pretty wild. Like one of the latest things that came out, and quite interestingly, Walt, we know more about what's happening in outer space than what's happening below our feet. So it's still a very new science. But what they recently figured out, so it all boils down to soil health is key. So if you have healthy soil, you'll have healthy plants and you'll have a garden that kind of works on its own. So what we have to be focusing on the most is how to improve the health of the soil. And there's several ways to do it. The most commonly known one is to create compost, but not just any compost, high quality compost, because 90% of the compost that we find in the garden centers is actually not good for the soil. Oftentimes they're now putting in like, just to give it that color that everybody thinks that's the good color, the brown darkness, they're spraying it. Can you imagine? They're adding chemicals to make it look like that.
It's a dye.
It's a dye. Well, it's like, how would you, that's the worst thing ever. So there's no microbiology. So microbiology is key for the soil health. And how it works, it's actually the same as our own gut, as our own stomach. So also in our gut,
good point,
we have microorganisms that help us digest the food. If we wouldn't have microorganisms, then we would just eat the food and it would just come out pretty much the same at the end. And we wouldn't be able to absorb the nutrients. So the microorganisms in our gut, they break it down in a certain way, so they make it bioavailable for our bodies to absorb it.
In fact, without those positive nutrients in our gut, we end up with diseases, we end up with being overweight, we end up with a whole bunch of stuff that we really don't want, simply because the flora of the gut just isn't flourishing. It's not doing its stuff.
Exactly, and that's exactly what's happening today because all the chemicals that are in our food, even in garden industry, also has quite a lot of chemicals being used, but that is killing our gut. So because we eat chemicals in our food, the microorganisms die. So you're losing the key thing that makes you healthy. So even if you would then eat healthy food, like the things that we consider to be healthy, the veggies and all the stuff, your body can't absorb it.
That's right.
So you need to revitalize your gut in that way. And now the cliffhanger is, in the soil, it's exactly the same, just inside out.
What do you
So
mean inside
imagine-
out?
So our gut is closed on the inside, right? But
Mhm.
just imagine turning our gut inside out, and that's how roots function.
I see.
The
Okay.
roots are the gut or the stomach from the plants. So that same interaction that's happening in our gut is also happening in the soil. So now what they see is that plants need certain minerals and nutrients at different times throughout the year, right? So now we're
Mhm.
heading into spring, spring has started. What do we need the most in spring for exponential growth? It's nitrogen. That's
Mhm.
what the plants need to produce a lot of new growth. So what do we do in let's say conventional gardening farming? We add chemical fertilizer so that the plants boost, and we add way too much because the plants, it's chemical, so we have to add more, and a lot is washed away with the
Mhm.
rain. But actually the plants can do it themselves, but only if the microorganisms are there. Because if it's in the soil but there's no microorganisms, same thing like in our gut, they can't absorb it. And now the craziest research that they figured out, this is from last year, is that the microorganisms and the plants are communicating.
Mm.
So because plants need certain minerals at certain times of the year, they need nitrogen at the beginning. So they'll tell the microorganisms, go find me some nitrogen and please make it bioavailable.
Mm.
Because if you don't make it bioavailable, I'm not going to give you what you like. So what do the microorganisms need to survive? What are plants doing? They're doing photosynthesis. And in that photosynthesis process, they are producing a few things. So you still remember your biology class. So they're producing oxygen.
Mhm.
And in the photosynthesis, they're also producing one thing, it's sugar in the
Mhm.
form of glucose. And that's what the microorganisms need to survive. So it's
Mhm.
like this huge stock exchange.
Right.
And just like imagine that 1 teaspoon of healthy soil has more microorganisms than there are people on the whole planet. So it's
I
like
just realized
wildly.
there was a funny little pun in there. I don't know if you intended it. You made the reference to the stock exchange, but there's also the stalk exchange.
Well, why is that?
Because the plant has a stalk.
The stock. Yeah, exactly. I love it. It's the stock exchange. I never thought about that. I love it. So yeah, it's this huge symbiosis that we're just starting to understand at the
Mhm.
surface level what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So, but now imagine it's like this ingenious system. It's very smart. It's been working in a certain way for billions of years. And now we humans, more recently in let's say the last 200 years, we could say when industrialization started, chemical uses, we're now disrupting the system by adding chemicals that completely destroy this balance.
Yeah,
And we
they're
could start
basically
blaming.
chemicals without the microorganisms is what it amounts to. They try to put the nitrogen and the potassium and all that in, but without the stuff that makes it work. So it's kind of like putting food on the table, but without cooking it, or maybe cooking is the
Yeah,
wrong word. Without preparing it in a way that you can actually ingest it and digest it and
exactly.
use it.
Or with like putting a cloth against our mouth so we can't eat
Yeah,
it. That's what
that's
we're
a good
doing.
way to say it. Yeah,
So it's right there. The food is there, but we can't eat it.
but we
That's
can't
what's
use it.
happening.
Right.
Yeah. And they like, I don't know what the exact percentages are, but still, because we put so much nitrogen, eventually the plant will take some of it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like random. Most of it is washed away in erosion, and that's then causing our oceans to be polluted as well.
Well,
So
plus what they're trying to do is they're trying to increase yield. They're more interested in yield than they are in quality.
exactly.
And the problem is that's exactly what they get. They get a large yield and low quality.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And in a way, there's nothing to blame for it, because the history of that whole thing is that it started after the Second World War, where there was a lot of famine. Like, you have to imagine Europe is destroyed. You had the famine in Ireland, where people are dying, like half the population gets eradicated. So that has all happened and was part of the memory of people at that time. and then they have this magic product that makes plants grow crazy, and they say, yeah, we have to keep doing this as much as possible because we never want to experience hunger again. It's the worst thing that can happen to humanity. And in that sense, I believe that most of world hunger is eradicated. The only areas where it still is more like conflict areas, or now increasingly as well, is where climate change is having such deep impact that they can no longer grow. But statistically, it's way less than what we have had. So we've pretty much eradicated world hunger.
Which is encouraging, by the way. That's
it's great. So that's like, we don't have to blame industrial farming for being such a polluter, but we do have to get to the root cause and now find a way to produce food at that same scale, but focus on nutrient density rather than yield, because that's exactly what you said.
That's really what the next part of the story is, isn't it? I mean, the fact that not so much on the industrial level, but at the smaller micro level, a lot of discovery is being accomplished in terms of how to shift the whole dynamic so that the food that comes up is actually highly nutritious rather than barren of the stuff that we need.
Yeah, totally. Because there are some science that shows that, like, if you want to have the amount of nutrients and vitamins from an apple from the 60s, you now have to like eat something like 15. You now have to eat 15 apples to get the amount of nutrients that they got in the 60s.
Yeah, I think I'll pass on that.
So, yeah. And then also, we're like some oranges that you buy in the supermarket, where we buy oranges mostly in winter because it gives us vitamin C. At least that's what we think. But some oranges that are heavily industrially produced, they don't have any vitamin C. Like, why would you even bother? Even if it's like the cheapest orange, like discount, why would you even buy it if it's just water and sugar?
Yeah, well, sure. And well, to me, there's also another issue. It's one that doesn't get as much attention. But for instance, I'm a tomato lover, and the only tomato I can buy, or the only tomato I will buy, are heirloom tomatoes. And one of the reasons I buy them is not only are they nutritionally better, they taste better. I mean, the flavor is just so much better on the old style vegetation. I mean, it's like, you know, a massive difference. You take a commercially produced tomato and an heirloom tomato, and you take a bite out of each one, and the commercially produced tomato, it's like, ugh. And the heirloom tomato is like, oh my God, that's so juicy. It's delicious. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I think taste is a great indicator of actual good taste.
And it's true for all of them, all the fruits, all the vegetables. I mean, if you're getting them through a system of farming or production that is true to all the different nutritional needs of the plant as well as the human, oh my goodness, the quality of the taste is so much better, and the quality of the food itself is so much better.
And it's even the same for the meat. For meat eaters out there, like I have some good news for you. So they are completely debunking the fact that meat should be bad for the environment. In fact, it's the way you look at it. The 90% of the meat that's currently being produced, maybe even 95 or more, is industrially produced. So that means feedlots, a lot of waste, nowhere to digest the manure to the soil. So that's very bad for environment. But if you use, for example, cows as they were meant to be, which is they're grazers, and you put them most of the year on pasture land or in nature reserves or other areas that are even hard to farm anything else on, then they will be grazing some herbs. They're grazing all kinds of different things. So I guess what? The cow's made of what it eats. And we are all what we eat in a way.
Right.
So that cow, if it's then slaughtered, that meat is of a premium quality, and you can really taste it as well.
That's fantastic.
And you feel great after it.
Yeah. What also have you heard about the different experiments that we heard about a few years ago? Louis would tell us about them. Experiments being done usually by single individuals, sometimes by small collectives, where people were trying to basically grow different kinds of crops together in the same space, crops that were symbiotic to each other rather than competing for the same resources, and developing unbelievable yields as a result. I mean, can you share anything about that?
Yes, so that's some like intercropping systems, or it's kind of the opposite of monoculture. that is very promising because you can now combine different plants that have different needs and that co-support them. Like a good one is now you could grow peas or lentils or any plant that, like even beans, those are all like nitrogen fixating plants. So so we talked about that we're producing chemical nitrogen to feed to the plants, and the way it's produced, it's a diesel engine run on on fuel that is getting nitrogen out of the atmosphere and making it into a liquid, and then you can spray it on your plants. But it's like you need a lot of burning fossil fuels before you have some liquid.
Sure.
And guess what? Plants can do it.
Yeah, how about that?
There's nitrogen fixating plants, and peas, beans, all those plants, clover, they get nitrogen out of the atmosphere. And then you have other plants that they need nitrogen, like the wheat, the wheat for bread, all those things. So if you can put them together and grow them together, you'll have higher yields. It's still very early stage, and our agricultural system is not really adapted to it because you need to have different machinery.
Yes,
it's totally possible, but you have to convince. We need mindset shifts with farmers. Like it's very promising, but it's not like an overnight success yet.
Have you done any experimenting with it?
Yes, we on our family farm, like not in direct cash cropping, intercropping, but what we do is between the different crops that we have, we use cover crops. So that's a practice where you have your cash crops, but then there's a period in between that you're not really growing anything because you finish the yield and you're not ready to plant the next crop.
The fallow period, it's often called.
Yeah, the fallow period. So usually what was done or still is being done in most conventional farming is they just leave it like it is. Weeds start to grow. Over time, they spray it with Roundup to kill the weeds, and then they plant the next crop.
Yeah.
And every time you use Roundup, you kill everything, not only the plants, but all the microorganisms that are actually helping us. So not a very good idea.
Not good for the humans either.
No, that's what's causing most of the cancers, Alzheimer. They're now figuring out that's all linked to those chemicals.
Right.
So the way we're currently doing it, or like it's a process, right? It's called regenerative farming. Like my father is a farmer. He has been pushed in an industrial system for the last 40 years. If he wouldn't have done it, he would have gone bankrupt because how the European Union worked. And it's pretty much the same in the US when it comes to agricultural policies, just to not have famine again. That's the whole idea behind it. Produce as much as you can. But then it comes with this whole series of problems. But so what we do in the in-between area to solve that is that we sow a mix of different cover crops. So cover crops are plants that are not necessarily cashable or edible, but they fulfill certain functions to restore the health of the soil. Because every time you have a crop, you're destroying the soil. Even if you don't use chemicals, you're tilling it, you're disturbing it. So we deliberately seed certain plants that will help restore the health of that soil. And actually, as they grow, they're also performing photosynthesis. So we're actually harvesting nutrients and nitrogen and all the goodies. We're harvesting it for free from the atmosphere. Whereas if you don't have it, or you might have a little bit of weeds that are not doing much, and it takes too long, we have actual plants growing in the in-between season. So we're feeding the soil. It's like kind of like giving it compost without having to put a lot of compost in.
Right. Yeah.
And that kills the other weeds. It keeps roots in the soil. So we've done some experiments and got some really, really good results. That we had potatoes that were harvested early. So they were already harvested in summer, which is early for potatoes. And then we only had pumpkins the next year in spring that are planted. So it's like 9 months where usually not much is grown or nothing is grown. So we used that time to really restore the health of the soil. And we saw the yield of the pumpkins the next year going up by 20, 30, 40% just by using that system. And also drastically reducing the maintenance in the pumpkins because they would grow way faster at the beginning of the season. So they would close the field faster. So we wouldn't have to do as much labor. to maintain it, because pumpkins can be a little bit labor intensive.
Right.
So cost going down, yield going up, and yeah, that's like, yeah, there's so many exciting things, and that's what I also cover in my book, is like when you can understand how nature works, then you can use that to your advantage, because what we're doing with the cover crops, we're imitating nature. So if you don't do anything, when you destroy or disturb the soil, even again without chemicals, even you're tilling it, you're turning it around. What nature does, or the smartness of nature, that nature will do everything at any given time to restore itself. And what plants is nature using to restore its own health? Something that we call weeds.
Yeah.
And they're actually just annual plants. Weed is a very nasty word, but they're annual plants that come and restore the health of the soil for a certain time. When they've fulfilled their prophecy, they disappear again. But then what we do is we're weeding the garden, killing the weeds, which is just inviting them to come back, because nature will keep doing that.
Right.
And that's how we break our backs in gardening, because we're fighting against nature. And you don't have to do that. There's solutions that are nature-based that can still give you an amazing, beautiful garden, but can drastically reduce the maintenance in your garden. And it's the same in farming. So with the cover crops that I explained, we're imitating nature. We're, instead of letting nature decide the nasty weeds that are like really difficult to get rid of, we pick the weeds that we want to grow. So the cover crops, they're all family of weeds, but they're not so nasty, let's say. They're easier to get rid of.
Not as invasive.
Not as invasive, exactly. So then we're actively growing weeds in a way. That's what cover crops are. But they're the nice kind of weeds that are helping us to restore the health of the soil. So it's very deliberate, and then your yields are way better.
Now, we've been talking about food and food gardening and food growing. And as listeners know, the business that I run is mainly about perennials, some annuals, but decorative type gardening.
Yes.
A lot of these same ideas apply. They just have to apply differently. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Totally. So to answer that question, we have to dig a little bit deeper into what are the principles that we can find in nature. So if you look, so this is also a quote from Einstein, when you want to understand everything better, look deep into nature. So we first have to look deep into nature. So where do you see in nature that you have bare soil? We hardly ever see it. It only happens after a landslide or a wildfire. And even then, when it's a wildfire, there's still something left on the surface. So what should we avoid at all costs is having soil that is left open, because the soil of our planet is actually like our own skin. When we scratch it open, it's like, it's not good. You'll get infections and all those stuff. So it's the same with the soil. So we need to keep the soil covered as much as possible. Now, easier said than done, right? Especially as a gardener and you want to grow ornamental plants. So you have plants, let's say you're building a new garden, which we're doing a lot as well. And you have your plants and you plant them everywhere, and you have space between the plants because they're still small and they need to grow. And you don't want to spend like a lot of money, or not necessarily huge amounts of unnecessary money, because if you plant them too close, eventually they will like interrupt each other. So you need to have space between your plants. So again, in the conventional way, you just leave it, and then you need to come every week or every 2 weeks to weed in between to make sure that the plants that you do want are not overgrown by the weeds. So how do we overcome that? There's a few ways that we could do. We could actually use that cover crop system from farming. We could do that at the same way in gardens. Just plant the cover crops a few months before you actually plant your crops. But oftentimes, and you have that experience as well, Walt, clients want immediately results, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Come in, do it, and a few weeks later, everything has to look amazing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of patience when it comes to that kind of thing.
No, exactly. So it can be challenging to do that thing with the cover crops, even though we've tried it in our own garden, and results are amazing, because you grow the cover crop, you plant your other stuff in between, the cover crop dies, and your new plants that you planted use the roots of the cover crop that are now dead. The plants will use that to go deeper faster. So they're more drought resistant. They grow better. They look healthier. There's low maintenance because they're covering the surface faster. So that's something I'm actually really excited to convince clients to, let's say, okay, let's just do a crazy experiment. Let me do that. I'll
we'll have
see.
to
I'll show you.
we'll have to have more conversation about that maybe offline because that's an ongoing issue. I mean, the way we handle the bare soil issue is by mulching because
Yeah,
it's a quick and easy solution, and it does
yeah,
at least introduce some organics, so there's some benefit there. But
exactly.
we also know intuitively. I mean, clients like it. They love the way it looks. It creates a nice, clean look to the garden and so forth.
Yeah.
But deep down, we know there's got to be a better way to do this. We haven't figured
Oh,
out what it
totally.
is, but there's got to be a better way to do
Yeah.
this.
Well, you touched upon it already. The mulch is important. Then also what we do in our garden. So if we plant a completely new garden, we'll first analyze like what are the weeds that are growing.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because the weeds that are growing before that can give us an indication of what's lacking in the soil. So I told you before, every weed comes for a reason. So if we look at the most famous weeds, let's call them the superstars, you have the dandelion, which is a lovely flower. It's beautiful, but when it's infested your perennial beds, it's not fun because
Not so
it's
fun,
really
no.
hard to get rid of.
Great
But
for
what
us
are
because we get lots of weeding work, but I take your point.
recurring income, right? But you should ask premium for solving their problems.
Yeah,
I think. But so the dandelions mean that the soil is compacted because what does a dandelion have? It has a really deep taproot that can go really deep, and the taproot is there to decompact the soil.
hmm
So, and what we are doing, we're pulling it out every time. And then the plant and nature is like, hey, I'm just trying to decompact the soil. You're pulling me out. Oh, okay, I'll send some more because we first need to decompact the soil. So solution is decompacting the soil and doing that with specific new tools that don't just till the whole soil. Because if you're tilling the whole soil over and over again, you're bringing up more and more weeds. So you need to have a right tool that we use. It's like a garden fork, but a special one here in Europe that like puts it into the soil and lifts it up a little bit. So you're decompacting it.
hmm
Then what we do is we always add a high quality compost. We work together with a farmer, an organic regenerative farmer in Belgium that has like the best compost in the world. And it looks completely different than what we're used to see. Like it's actually when compost is dark, it's not a good indication because it means that it's been burnt.
Right.
Like we think brown compost, that's what we want, the gold, the dark gold, right?
Right.
But it's not good. It means it has been overheated and you lose, there's a lot of gases and actually it kills the microorganisms as well.
Yeah, the way we explain to our customers, it actually hasn't been developed enough to the point where it can become a healthy contributor to the soil. It's going to destroy more than it's going to help.
Yeah, exactly. But then we have this regenerative farmer, which the cool thing is we only need like a few inches of the healthy compost because then it helps restore the balance of the soil naturally because that high quality compost full of microorganisms and that's what we want, so that then nature does the work for us.
Yeah,
so
we do very much the same thing. We're trying to sell to our customers the idea that the main thing we're trying to overcome is all of the chemicals they've been putting down. We're trying to reclaim from what they were doing before. And we offer usually the same kind of thing you're talking about. We get an organic compost. We have a particular one that we like to use that's based on lobster parts. We mix the compost in and then we start, it's not really tilling it, but we kind of mix it into the soil. And then like at the end of the season, the customers are raving because their plants are, thriving more than they ever had before, flowering more than they had before. What did you do? It's incredible. Well, all we did was just restore the natural balance of it. But the hard part is just convincing them that it's actually going to work.
I had trouble convincing my clients of investing more in it because it is more expensive at the beginning.
At first, yeah.
You have this,
in the long run, it's actually less expensive, I think.
Yeah, end of the road, it's way less expensive. Yeah. I'll explain you that in Belgium. So I found this client that she's actually collaborating with my brother on making pasta. So we have chicken on our farm that are free range, and we use some of the eggs to make our own pasta, and she's the one producing that. So she already understood regenerative farming, and she's very excited about what we've been doing on our farm. And she contacted me, and I told about what I do, kind of the same in farming and gardening. And she's like, "Oh, I love it. I'll give you like carte blanche. Do whatever you need to do. We'll pay for it. I really believe you can do it." So I did, and we we had to spend, I would say, maybe 10 to 20% more in the initial setup of the garden,
Makes sense.
which is not huge, but it makes sense, mostly because of the high quality compost, and then also mulching it with something we grow on our own farm. It's beans. So we have kidney beans that we grow on our farm, and that's kidney beans are also nitrogen fixators. So
Oh, okay. I
the
didn't know that.
straw
Okay.
that we harvest from the beans is perfect balance between nitrogen and carbon.
Oh, very nice.
So that's really feeding the soil as it's decomposing over time. But
That's
it's
gonna have
also
a good decompose rate too, isn't it?
no, it's quite like hard.
Yeah. So, but that's what I mean. It's going to decompose slowly over time, which is what
Yes.
you want with a good mulch.
Yes, exactly. In our climate in Belgium, which is quite wet, we see it last for at least 9 months,
Wow,
which is great.
that's
So we
impressive.
only mulch once or twice max a year.
Which is what you want. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And
That's very
the slugs
impressive.
also don't, because it's kind of like hard. The slugs have to like completely climb over it, so
Right.
it's making it a little bit more difficult for slugs, which is a big problem in Belgium, at least. But then we're solving it by putting ducks in the gardens.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
They're like this special duck that is not can't fly.
Okay.
We call it a bottle. It's a Chinese or Japanese type of duck that cannot fly.
Okay.
It walks like a little penguin. So it
I love
stays
it.
in the garden if you fence it. And they love slugs. They like eat a lot of them.
Ah,
So then we're recreating a balance again. Again, being like inspired in how nature works. Like you have a problem in your garden, look at how nature would solve that problem and imitate it. Find a same or similar way to do it. So then
exciting.
we did it with that, and then the cover, the mulch is really important. So in that garden that I told you about, it's a 3,000 square feet garden.
Mhm.
Not huge, but it's also not small. And the client said, I want everything: beautiful flowers, edible plants, vegetables, like the whole thing. She said, like, I want to walk in my garden, eat my berries, eat an apple.
Sure.
Kind of, and she said, like, no limits. And I was like, okay.
Nice. Oh boy, you get a client like that, you say, yeah, here we go.
Yes, exactly. So we kind of like took it at heart, and we said, okay, we'll plant all those things. We're also very smart in what to plant where, and like there's obviously a science to that as well. But then we did it, and after completing the garden, which, by the way, before it was infested with some weeds that are very nasty, and that's because they've been using chemicals to trying to get rid of the weeds, which makes the problem worse and worse and worse over here.
Right.
But it's a weed that in Belgium we call it the gardener's nightmare. That's called in the like as a local name, because it's like really people think that it's impossible to get rid of.
Wow.
But we fixed the soil and it disappeared naturally.
Nice.
In the first year. There's still a little bit of it left. But so the garden, as we finished it in the next 9 months, it only after completing it, so from finishing it with the contractor, in the next 9 months, there was only 12 hours of maintenance.
Wow. How big?
So you're in the
how
maintenance
extensive was
business.
this garden? How big was the garden space?
3,000 square feet.
Wow. Okay, that's
and
impressive.
most of it was plants, like maybe 1/3 or 20% is lawn. So most of it were like perennials, shrubs, the whole mix.
Yeah, that's very impressive. I love that. Yeah.
Yes. So now my client is like super happy, and the maintenance
God,
is
imagine she would
doable.
be, yeah.
So I think now we should come up with concepts that we can ask premium prices for, saying like
absolutely,
you
yeah,
a garden like that.
Especially when you have that kind of story you can share, because that's going to resonate.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now you have a book that you published, and you made reference to it before, but we haven't really talked about that. Give us a little more detail about the book.
Yeah, so it's called 12 Universal Laws of Nature: How to Get the Most Potential Out of Your Land. And the way I come up with it is I'm going also through my life story, thinking like, okay, I had this early success, but then huge failure.
Yeah.
And then I started to, as a kid, I was always interested about how things work. Like my sisters had all these toys, like I was the one I had to break it open to know how it works. I wasn't really good at putting it together again, but that's another story. But at least I understood, like, this is how the mechanics work, and that's what I did with nature. I went on this trip. I took permaculture classes. I studied. I really want to understand the whole ecology. because that's what it's synthesized in the 12 universal laws of nature, which, by the way, they're actually also spiritual laws, because as it turns out, whatever works on the spiritual realm is also working in nature, or probably it's coming from nature and we're adapting it.
Who
That's why
knew?
it's working.
Yeah.
So, and then I go through the whole book with also a bunch of like how you can then actually use that knowledge from nature and become successful at gardening, or even if you have a small balcony, a backyard garden, or a bigger farm, like how can you now apply that in practice?
Beautiful. That's great. And when was the book published?
Sorry, where?
When was the book published?
Oh, it was last year in November.
Last year. So it's only about 6 months old. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
How's it doing?
Yeah, it's good. It's on Amazon now recently. So
Beautiful.
we're promoting it there. And yeah, I sold out like 200 books before the actual launch in November.
Whoa, congratulations. That's a great start.
Yes. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's exciting when that kind of thing happens.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that you have courses that you've created. Tell us a little bit about the courses.
Yes. So a funny story, I had this client probably 3 years ago. We had completely redesigned and revamped their beautiful house. They had just finished renovating it, and the whole garden and all the surrounding needed a really big update, or a complete redesign, actually. So we did that. We redesigned, because it's a big property, like several hectares, and we redid most of the parts around the house, because they said we'll start with that, and then over time we can add more. So we did that. They loved the results. It was beautiful. And then my client came to me and she said, like, well, I really love what you did, but you know what? I'm actually done with landscape architects.
Okay.
She said that to me, but she's very lovely, and I love her for saying that, because she said, like, I'm done with it because I want to experience it myself. I want to get my hands dirty.
I see.
I want to
Okay.
learn how to design it myself. And I was like, interesting. And I already had this thought, like, okay, how can I scale my business? Because I can only do X amount of, we're mostly focusing high luxury gardens.
Sure.
That we completely redesign. So there's only there's only 2 handfuls that I can do in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I want to have a huge impact in farming. And so how can I scale it? And then I thought, like, yeah, if I just teach what I know to other people, they can do it themselves, or teach it to other people. So I started doing that. And so that client that said, like, I want to learn it myself, I said, you know what, I'm going to teach you everything that I know. So from that course, I hired a coach that helped me to build a very successful masterclass that's like an expert in how to do that. So we built the course. I started teaching it to the people. I have some AI integration in it. So pretty much how it works in a nutshell is that we spent some time on analyzing your garden. So we get into like what's your soil condition? Where are you in the world? What hardiness zone are you? Like, we gather a lot of information, as much as we can, and then we put that in our AI system that then spits out a whole list of plants that will grow in your garden, and it gives you the amount. It gives you, so it's a little bit more complex than that, but it's really time, like,
right.
It helps to make this course only 9 weeks, because if I would have to teach it myself to every single person across the world, it will take as much as I had to do to get my
that would have been substantial.
5 years, and even then I didn't know all the plants.
Right.
So I'm using AI now to help people to pick the plants in their garden. I also teach them how to design it. So in 9 weeks, they really can learn a lot in how to create their own dream garden.
That's beautiful.
Because I feel there's like a desire for many people to do it themselves. And then I had crazy stories, like I just wanted to teach it to people so they can do it for their own garden.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was my third client, on Sophie, who joined the course, and she had done like a little bit of an evening school in like some gardening, not much, and she was actually not very happy from it. It was made from the government. She wasn't happy about the course, so she joined my course. And in week 6, she makes like a garden design, and I'm looking at it, thinking like, I'm just gonna teach it and I'll see what it brings, and I'll try and help them. I look at her design, and after 6 weeks, I'm like, wow. I'm like trying to give her feedback and think like, what should I do different? I'm like, wow, I couldn't do it better. Like, honestly.
Wow.
And she goes on and makes it for her own garden, and it must have been laying on the kitchen table. She has friends coming over. Asking like, what is this? What are you doing? This looks really cool. she said, yeah, I'm taking this course on how to design my own garden. And they're like, wow, cool. Can you do that for me as well? She's like, oh yeah, I could definitely do that. She's like in HR. She has an HR job, but she has a passion for gardening. So now she's designing gardens for other people.
Yeah.
And I've had another young guy approaching me, had no knowledge in garden design, but he had done some permaculture courses, but he was struggling to like, okay, how can he make a business out of it? So I've helped him build his own business. In 4 months, he now has like his own clients.
Wow.
So everything that I had to learn took me like 5 years plus 2 years in working in an office. And then now people are doing it way faster with my help and with the help of AI.
That's so exciting, though, that you're able to help them get that boost, and it, like you said, it does promote your business, and so it all ties together. But that's fabulous.
Yes, thank you.
Exciting. Yeah, I love that. Tell people where they can find the courses.
Yeah, so if you go to my website called www.gardenofyourdreams.com.
How'd you get that? That's a good one. How'd you get that domain?
I don't know. I just came up with a name for the course. I went on these websites that sell URLs, and this one was still available. Nobody had ever bought it.
Yeah.
So if you go to that .com, and then for your listeners, I'm giving access to a free training. So if you then do free training, then you'll get to the course directly, and then you can follow a 30-minute training. If you like it, you can book a meeting with me through Calendly, and we'll get on a call, and I'll explain you the course, and we'll see if it's a match for you. Because for some people it is, others not. I'm a little bit picky on who to choose. You have to kind of audition to. A
good coach knows that they can't help everybody, but they know who they can help, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to decide, is this somebody I really can help? Because if I can't, I don't want to take their money. I won't give them the value they need.
No, it's not
and
nice.
You probably already have a list of people you can pass them to if it's somebody that you can't help. I mean, that's the way this usually works.
Yeah, I always ask my clients, are you committed? Are you coachable? And are you resourceful?
Yeah.
In time and money to invest in the course. So, and if they say no, then I don't take them on.
That's a good thing. And the book, the 12 Universal Laws of Nature that you said that's on Amazon, is it just Amazon, or is that the other bookstores, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's on other bookstores yet, but if you can just go on Amazon.com and Google my name, or Google my name, and you'll find it.
Beautiful. And for somebody who wants to just reach out to you, do you welcome people to contact you?
Yes, yeah, they can. If they feel like really I want to take action and I'm ready to solve it, they can book a meeting, like a virtual coffee, through my Calendly link that I'll provide you, and then we can chat in a 30-minute call, and from there we can keep it going.
Is the best place to go the gardenofyourdreams.com website?
Yes, there you can find all the links and book a meeting with me.
Beautiful.
I also have my other, like, if people say like, I don't have time, but I want an amazing garden that takes care of itself, then you can also go to my other website, which is www.paulonia-la.com, which is a beautiful tree that is, beautiful flowers. It grows really fast, makes beautiful leaves, and it has a good impact on the environment. So on that website, you can find some references of our projects that we like, the done for me approach, where you don't have to do anything. You get we do it from A to Z, and then Walt, we can work together on it and executing it.
No, actually, you don't want me. You want my gardeners. I have really great gardeners. You actually do not want me working on that. Trust me when I say,
well,
I have the black thumb, they have the green thumb.
Yes.
What I know is how to run the business. I mean, I hire the best people for a reason, because if I had to depend on my skills in gardening to make this business work, I'd be out of business. It just wouldn't work.
No, but it's good that you know that you like. That's what I'm really into now. I have an assistant. I'm working with an architect who is really skilled, and he can make all the digital drawings, 3D stuff. Yeah. Because I'm not good at that at all. I like sketching. I like making designs and coming up with the vision, the idea, the contact with the clients. So I'm also know what my strengths and weaknesses are. It's very important, and I really appreciated that you're being so open about it.
Well,
so
I appreciate.
In the right place.
I appreciate all of all of the approach that you bring to landscape, because quite honestly, there aren't many people in our area who provide just gardening services. We're one of the rare ones. Most of them fall under the category of landscapers. But landscapers here, we basically describe them as people who carry weed whackers. All they do is just whack weeds all over the place. They don't actually do any growing. In fact,
No.
they're probably the best way for us to get business, because they go in, they destroy, what the people have, and they say, okay, please rescue us from what the landscapers did.
Oh yeah, totally. No, yeah,
Yeah.
there's some. If you want, I've been like investigating a little bit in what, like, let's call it the dark side of the landscape industry.
Yeah,
And there's no like dark forces behind it. It's just how things have evolved over time.
that's right.
Let's look at. Do you want me to explain this?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So if you look at the garden centers, they don't want you to be successful at gardening. That's like the least of their concern, because if you become successful at gardening, what will happen? You won't have to come back to them.
Yeah,
So
they want to keep selling you new plants.
exactly, and all these crazy tools that don't work, and every year they come up with the next fancy thing to kill weeds, and then now chemicals are starting to be forbidden, so they'll come up with some new bio weed killer, but that doesn't work. So it's really important to take advice from the people that have interest and at you becoming successful. Like when people follow my course, I need them to be successful. Like it's in my best interest, because I need good testimonials that whatever I'm doing is working, which we do. You can find it on our website. So, and I really want to help people to be successful at gardening. So garden center is not necessarily the best place to go, and nothing against them, because they're just businesses themselves. Like they're not evil or anything. It's just how things have evolved. Same with the whole chemical part of, like, if you look at lawn care, it's very dependent on external inputs. So if you just make the conventional lawns, then we have to keep adding chemicals to it, and that's the business model behind it, unfortunately.
Well,
but
I
I think
will say, on behalf of the garden centers in our area, many of them do fit the category you were describing, but there are quite a few, the ones that we do business with, that are actively oriented toward the truly organic approach to gardening. So it's a good thing. There are some that actually do that. But
I should take back my words, not to. I apologize for like generalizing it, because there are some really good industries out there. We also
thank goodness, otherwise we'd have a hard time.
But most of the like purely commercial, we can't say it in that sense, but it's some are good.
Because you're right, those also exist, and they are the bane of our industry.
Yes, they grow plants chemically indoors that start flowering in the greenhouse.
Right.
And then you can buy them, but they're like full of chemicals and they're growing too fast. Then you take them home
and they die.
Put them in the wrong spot, because people just buy it and then plant it wherever they think it looks nice, but it's the wrong soil, the wrong light,
the wrong lighting, everything. Yeah.
And then it just dies, and then you go again every spring.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So so I really appreciate that about the way you approach landscaping, because what you're talking about, it's not just I mean, obviously we just do the perennials and annuals, but especially with vegetables and with plant growth for food supply, I love that you're really oriented toward making food supply that is healthy in all ways, healthy for the human, healthy for the soil, healthy for the other plants, where it's all a self-sustaining kind of situation, rather than go in and kill it with chemicals and then do it all over again and basically lose ground every year. I love that your approach is that way. That's great.
True. And I think in that sense, what our industry could use as well is moving away from being rewarded for time and rather being rewarded for.
If you figure that one out, let me know. We're still working on that one.
We could talk about it, because I do believe it must be possible. Like, if you can tell someone that you make their maintenance way less, and
well, that is true,
and the cost will also go down, and we won't have to come as much, but we'll charge because we know how to do it, and there's a whole science behind it.
And even better, the garden actually looks good throughout the season.
Yes. So, and then with your gardening business, you can help more gardeners, or you can help more owners, and you told me at the offline as well that you're working a lot with people that are getting into their retirement age, that are less and less mobile.
Exactly.
And as we look at the population is getting older as well. So whatever you're doing, more and more and more people will need that support. So you could think like, oh, but then we're going to take away jobs or something like that. No, we won't, because there's still plenty of work to
No,
do.
actually, we end up adding jobs. It's odd to me that we really don't have a lot of competition in our area, because we keep growing every year. We're adding staff every year. So, there are still, people who try to do their own, one-man gardening operation. You do get those popping up. They usually don't last very long.
No,
They haven't
same
figured
with
out how to
that.
do it the way we do it. But right now we have like 10 gardeners on staff, and we're hoping to expand it this year. So,
Yeah, see if you could reach more gardeners with the same amount of staff, and your staff also being happier about the kind of work that they have to do, more like checking, mitigating, maybe adjusting a little bit, rather than sitting on their knees all day and plugging the weeds. That I've done that when I was as a summer job. I did that all summer. I was really happy about it, because I got to see some of the most amazing gardens in Belgium.
Sure.
But it's like it's physical hard work.
It is, yes.
And in summer you're doing like 14, 15 hours a day. You come home, eat, sleep, and then you just do it again.
Well, we actually won't allow that. We insist that our gardeners not work that many hours in a day, just because it's not good for the gardener.
I think 15 is a little bit too much, but I still remember that I would wake up at 6 in the morning and I wouldn't be home before 8.
Wow.
Because we have a really long summer night. So,
it's a real long day.
I mean, you have breaks and stuff, but I enjoyed it. But if we can make that work more fun, because it was just sitting on your knees and pulling out weeds all day.
One of my goals has been to shorten the hours so that they aren't overworking themselves, but also pay them more than the landscaping industry normally pays. In other words, make it an income that actually supports you, rather than something that you're just scraping to get by. And it's been a challenge, but we've managed pretty much to do it. The only thing that I haven't been able to totally figure out is how to keep them sustained during the winter months when we can't do any gardening. I haven't quite figured that part out. But in terms of the gardening season itself, we pay higher than anybody around here, and yet we're still able to keep expanding.
Nice. So you've got a good business going on and helping garden owners already.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's a lot of fun. One other thing I want to share with you too. I already shared one of the most important things, that I really appreciate what you guys are doing with your architecture firm, and how you're helping people to understand that they can actually have gardens that are self-sustaining and healthy and in harmony, I guess I would say, with the way life actually operates. That's a beautiful thing. So thank you for that. But there's also
beautiful, beautiful, because many people a paradigm like that. Oh, if you want to make an ecological garden, it looks messy. Like
it doesn't have to.
Yeah. It's just the way you set it up, and
that's
it can look messy, and that's what unfortunately most of the, let's say, ecological gardens and permaculture gardens, they often look very messy. But it doesn't have to be like that. We nailed that in our projects.
That's beautiful.
It's really cool to see the clients getting super happy. Like, what? How do you do that?
Well, I really appreciate that. But there's something else I appreciate, and I appreciate this with all of our guests. But it also fits in your particular case because of the courses that you created and the book that you wrote. And you were telling me how you've done all these podcasts. I think you said you've done 100 podcasts or something like that. You're doing all these things to put information out and put it into the hands of people, very often whom you never meet, never know what they're doing with it, and you never get any credit for it directly. And I realized that's something we need to adjust that. So I know from having done this show, I've been doing it for 12 and a half years now, done over 2,000 episodes, hundreds and hundreds of guests. I've gotten enough input from guests and listeners and so forth to realize we touch a lot of people that we don't know, and we touch them in a big way. We just never find out about it. Nice. And I know it's true for the guests who come on to this show, but also who do other shows and who do social media and write articles and blogs and so forth. They're helping people. They just don't know about it, and they aren't getting credit for it. And I say to myself, well, you know what? I can do something about that. So Matthieu, on behalf of those people you've never met and you've never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you don't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Wow, Walt, you make me quiet. Nobody has ever done that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, because I'm like on a mission to
We
help.
need to do this more. This is important. I mean, I do it now every time because I love getting the reaction. But also, this is very important stuff. That's the era we live in. We live in the 21st century where we're now all internet connected, and we can have these kind of communications with each other. You're in the Azores, for instance. I'm in Connecticut. We're having this conversation that's going to be heard by people around the world. That's an amazing thing. But
That's
because
great.
of that, and we're sharing all this information, we're publishing all this stuff, putting stuff out there, and we're not getting credit for it. We can give credit for it. And that's why I wanted to share that with you, because we all deserve thanks for that kind of credit, including you. And I especially love the stuff that you're doing. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. Very much appreciated and well received. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the show. We really appreciate that too.
Yeah, thank you for doing this work for 12 years. Wow, what an achievement, because like podcasts are getting a lot of attention now, or maybe in the last 2, 3, 4 years, but you've been doing it for 12 years.
Well, I had a tech background, so it made it easier. I could do it when YouTube didn't really exist and Zoom didn't really exist. Yeah, I kind of figured out ways to make it happen.
Wow, you're way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, but it's so much fun. I love it. I have so much fun talking to people, and it's such a high energy that comes out of it. I don't think I'll ever stop doing it. I think I'll do it for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So thank you, Matthieu. Best of luck with what you're doing, especially now that you're in the Azores. And we didn't even get to that part, but I mean, whatever it is that you're doing there, just keep it up because you're doing good stuff. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Walt, for having me. I think if you're up for it, I'd love to revisit at some point and give you some more updates. And I feel like we could keep talking for hours, but
well, that's the way a good show goes. I mean, we have like a barometer that we use. The barometer is if I'm looking at the clock every 5 minutes saying, okay, when's this going to end? I know it's not a good show. But if I look at the clock and I say, oh my God, where did the time go? That's a good show.
Yeah.
And that's what it was today. Like, oh my God, where did the time go?
Yeah, you asked some very good questions and we share a passion.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.